What is up, everyone? I'm back at it again, and today some controversy will absolutely be stirred up because the discussion is the top 10 players heading into next season.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm!
Wait.
Now, let me be as perfectly clear as I can be that this list is where these players currently sit heading into next season. It's not where I think they'll be by season's end or anything of the sort. And I don't want to spend too much time on this intro because otherwise this video will take forever. And when I'm introducing these players, I'm also just going to try to be as clear, concise, and to the point as I can be when it pertains to the said player that I'm talking about, because otherwise, again, this thing could really go on for ages. So nonetheless, let's hop right into the video and start it off at number 10. Kicking things off here is going to be Nikola Jokic, and there's a lot of talented players to consider here for the 10 spot. You could have gone with a guy like Joel Embiid, you could have absolutely made an argument for him, or you could have made an argument for somebody like Jimmy Butler, but ultimately I had to go with Jokic. Now, obviously, he lacks a little bit on the defensive end, but ultimately I don't think his reputation is really as bad as people make it out to be, and he has improved on that side of the ball. But obviously, the talking point with Jokic isn't going to be his defense, it's going to be his offense. And for that center position, and especially in modern day basketball, he's such a unique talent that really transcends the game. Obviously, he can get his buckets inside, no problem. I mean, he stretches the court great as well. But his passing is just so unique to that spot. And he plays the game almost like just a really big guard. And when you have a player like Jokic, it is just so easy to build a successful offense around him. A lot easier than I honestly think it is with a guy like Jimmy or with a guy like Embiid. And if I was starting a team from scratch, I honestly think I would ultimately go with Jokic over those other two guys. And honestly, I think that team will get further. At me.
What's up, bro? What, bro? What's up, bro? Take a swing, bro. Right here, bro.
At the 9th spot, we're going to have Damien Lillard. Now, Dame just seems to continue to elevate his game every season. It seems that territory that was once only Steph Curry range has now also been inhabited by Dame time.
Lillard, long range three.
Questions still remain around whether or not you can put a championship team in Portland around Damien Lillard as your number one. But individually, there's no denying Damien Lillard's impact on the court. I think he's starting to develop that same kind of gravity that Steph Curry has on the offense. And while he may not do it to the same levels that Steph does, and he might be worse on the defensive end as well, he's definitely comparable and ultimately more than good enough to slot into a top 10 spot. Number 8, I'm going to have Kevin Durant. And this is without a doubt the toughest placement of all when it comes to this top 10 list. And honestly, probably the one that's going to stir up the most controversy. When Kevin Durant went down with his injury, you could make an argument that he was the best player on the planet at the time. With all due respect to LeBron, of course. And I've seen plenty of lists heading into next season that list Kevin Durant as high as number 2. But I really do think those people are discounting how tough it is to come back from an Achilles injury. For my money's worth, the Achilles injury is probably the worst injury that you can suffer as an NBA player, especially at Kevin Durant's age and at Kevin Durant's size. I do think it will cost Kevin Durant a lot of what made him truly special as an NBA talent, which in particular here I'm referring to his dribble pull-up game. And while I have full confidence that Kevin Durant is still going to be an elite player when he comes back, I don't really quite think he's going to reach the same heights that he was at before. But hey, I'll be happy to be wrong. Luka Doncic comes in at number 7. Heading into his 3rd NBA season, Luka has plenty of expectations on him after having an all-time great sophomore campaign. Some have him as the early MVP favorite, which is both kind of absurd and yet oddly justifiable. Luka should be somebody that's going to be a rapid climber on these lists. And while he may be higher than this by the end of the season, based on what we've seen from him to this date, I do think 7 is a fair placement for him. I debated the 6 and the 5 spot a little bit, but But ultimately, I decided to go with Steph Curry at the 6. The threat of Steph Curry on the basketball floor alone just creates and opens up so much for your offense.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
He's really an offensive system unto himself. He's the greatest shooter of all time. He's a fantastic finisher around the rim, a gifted playmaker, and honestly, a better defender than some may have you believe. He should still be a transcendent talent when the Warriors are back at full strength for next season. To kick off the top 5, I'm gonna go James Harden. Some will have you question whether or not you can build a championship team around James Harden as your main star. But what is undeniable and undoubtable though is Harden's legacy as one of the most unstoppable scorers, not only of his generation, but really of all time. Harden changed the game of basketball a lot more than I feel like he gets credit for sometimes. In particular, I'm referring to how combo guards are viewed in the NBA now. I believe it was Chauncey Billups, but don't 100% quote me on this, but I do believe it was Chauncey that was talking about how his career suffered from the negative stigma that was around combo guards at his time. And I do think James Harden has done so much to change that perception and to really open up the game for how the position is played. Especially if you look at the successes of guys like Bradley Beal and Devin Booker and the way they play their game, I do think a lot of that credit has to go to James Harden and how he revolutionized the 2 spot. It's time to give the beard his due. Not only is one of the best players in the game today, but is one of the best players really in NBA history.
Gerald Green to inbound. Harden trying to get free. Down to 3, down to 2. It's a 3. Good! Good! He got it! James Harden, a flamethrower!
The newly crowned NBA champions, the Los Angeles Lakers, are going to get their first of 2 entries in this top 5. And this one is obviously going to be AD. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Anthony Davis is still underrated in many NBA circles. But I mean, playing with LeBron will do that to you. Now, ultimately what gave AD the nod here at number 4 for me was his impact on the defensive end. We all know what AD can do offensively. He's an all-time lob threat. He's a gifted scorer, both around the basket and in the mid-range. Plus, he's just good enough from 3 to make the defense respect that shot and stretch the court as well. Defensively though, that's his bread and butter. I mean, he is an absolute game changer, both protecting the rim and honestly one-on-one, he can go toe-to-toe with almost any player, really. I mean, for my money's worth, I still think he should have won Defensive Player of the Year last year.
But I'm not done yet.
And what's scary when you talk about Anthony Davis is he's only 27. He's just hitting his peak. He may very well still be climbing this list. I'm going to reveal number 3 and number 2 together because honestly, it was such a close call to me. But ultimately, I went with Kawhi at number 3 and I went with Giannis at number 2. For those of you that saw it, I did run an Instagram poll on my page for who you'd place higher, and the voting was insanely close the entire time. It was pretty much 50-50 the entire way, and that's honestly exactly how I felt about it, that it genuinely was this close. Ultimately, I did place Giannis higher though because he is coming off the MVP, he's coming off a Defensive Player of the Year, so he did really accomplish more in that last season, showed us more. Kawhi had a very good season in LA, and barring the disaster that happened in the playoffs, but I'm not going to be a prisoner of the moment when it comes to that. He's still a fantastic talent and easily one of the best players in the game today. If you wanted to flip these two around and have Kawhi at 2 and Giannis at 3, I wouldn't really fight you on it, but ultimately, this is what I settled on.
LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James.
It feels ridiculous to me that LeBron James has been at worst a top 5 player for the entirety of the duration that I've been watching basketball. And frankly, for most of those years, like this one, he was number one. He's 35 years old and will be 36 by the year's end, and he still remains at the top of his game and at the top of this league. He may have lost like half a step athletically, but what he's lost athletically, he more than makes up for with his unparalleled basketball IQ. At this point, you're not really comparing LeBron to the rest of the guys on this list. There's only one true comparison left for the King, and I think everybody knows what that one is. So there you have it. That is my list of the top 10 players heading into the next NBA season, which might be sooner rather than later if you read the reports of the fact that it might start up again on the 22nd of December. But nonetheless, as I said at the beginning of the video, these lists are always controversial. Everybody always thinks they know better in their own regard, or mostly because they have different criteria for what they qualify as greatness or how they rank players. So with that being said, comment below. I absolutely want to know what you folks think. Let me know who's too high, who's too low. You know the drill. Other than that, folks, like the video. It helps me out a lot. And if you can, obviously share the video. I appreciate that so much every time you folks do it. And other than that, I am out of here.